Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much for joining another GoDaddy Pro EMEA Meetup. Today is 21st of June and 2021, and I surely hope that everyone is already planning for some type of vacation or relaxation. In the meantime, we have amazing guests who will bring us lots of values today, especially when it comes to optimizing the conversions of the website. So today we have Jono. Hi, Jono. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thanks.
And we have Pete. Hi, Pete.
Hello. This needs to start with like the Ministry of Funny Waves. If you've ever seen Monty Python, the Ministry of Funny Walks, start with the Ministry of Funny Waves. That would be a fun thing to do.
That's awesome. I'm gonna start preparing this for the next time. Okay, that's good. I always accept any advice. So to start this properly and to be able actually to present our ideas for tonight, I would first like to ask Jono if he can tell us something about himself and the topic what we will be talking today.
That's exciting. So, hi, I'm Jono, Silly Wave, very good. My job title is Special Ops at Yoast. I don't know what that means either, but I do a whole bunch of research and development. I chip away at our product roadmap, and I do a lot of work in the SEO community and the analytics community and a lot of conferences and events and our own SEO. So a lot of kind of eating our own medicine and making sure that we're right at the cutting edge of the SEO game. So it's a whole lot of fun and a whole lot of chaos. And a fun fact, also today is World Music Day. I have a weird side hobby, which is where I learned WordPress. I run a little side website called daysoftheyear.com that lists all of the world's weird national holidays. So that's fun.
That's nice. Maybe you can share this website with us. Maybe we can learn something.
Yeah, I'll put a link in. Why not?
Please do. In the meantime, you guys know Pete already. Pete has been our guest. So Pete, without further ado, can you please tell us something new about yourself?
So when I normally get asked this question, I normally say that I've been in the cockpit of an aeroplane as it landed in Toronto, but we got put into a stack, so we actually did 2 full circuits of Niagara Falls while I had a 180-degree view with just 2 pilots in the way for you know, as we landed. So that was really cool. That was when I was 13, and yeah, something that I'll certainly remember forever.
That's awesome. So basically, both Pete and Jono are experts in SEO. And today's topic is actually, since we started this summer, we spoke about, in general, about the WooCommerce. Then we spoke about what type of tools and plugins you might consider when building a WooCommerce store. And today already thinking that we already have chosen the right plugin. We already have a website that is operating. Today we will be talking about how to improve its visibility and what is the role of SEO in conversions. Also, we already had a question whether it's an advanced. So we will perhaps touch some advanced topics when it comes to SEO, but you guys might, our audience can ask any type of questions, and if needed, we can go even into deeper details when it comes to some things that you might not be aware of. In general, Jono will start with a presentation that might open some ideas or might actually remind you of some things what you were not sure either how to do it with Yoast as a plugin, or maybe you didn't understand the point of SEO in general. So without further ado, Jono, could you tell us, please, why SEO is an important part of conversion and profitability in general, why websites are being built?
Oh, I could do that with some slides. That's exciting.
That's awesome. Please.
Jimmy's just posted a really good question, which we should probably start with and address, saying, what do you mean by conversion? That's a really good question. And I guess the easy answer is something like somebody buying something on your site, but not every site is e-commerce. It might be filling out an application form or getting in touch or picking up the phone, any kind of success outcome. So that's really what we're looking at. Okay, so I have, yeah, there we go, that's worked. I have a whole bunch of slides. Which I'll go through very, very fast because we can talk about them much more interestingly together afterwards, but it'll set the scene, hopefully, because I think that we're missing a step here. I think that optimizing for conversions and getting more conversions with SEO is a lovely idea, but the bit that happens before that is you've got to optimize if you want to survive long enough to reach your audience and can get them from Google and then convince them that you're worthy of being converted with. So I want you to imagine a world where brands compete not based on how big their marketing budgets are, or how many developers they have, or how good they are at SEO, or how clever their website is, but a world where brands compete on a level playing field based on their virtues and the quality of their product and their service. Think about whether your brand would survive and how well it would do versus your competitors, and then start to think about what we might do to stack those odds and help optimize your activities, tactics, and strategies. Because, cliche, the world is changing. Digital and analog realities are blurring, especially with the world scenarios we have at the moment with COVID and people's changing behaviors. We see a blurring of online and offline and desktop and mobile and TV and rich interfaces on our toasters and so commerce and social media. All of this is blurring into one thing. But our businesses fundamentally aren't changing. The ways that we try and part our audiences with their time or money or preferences haven't really changed at all since the early web. We essentially took our offline analog model and we just plunked it on the web. We run our websites like brick and mortar stores where we pick our target audiences, we craft our environments, and then we try and convince people to come in so that we can give them our sales messaging and convince them to buy our stuff. And we're picking up some clever tactics online, but fundamentally our strategies are pretty much the same. That needs to change. Because today, and this sounds incredibly ridiculous to say, but consumers live in an information scarce world. People don't have access to all of the information available, which is why this kind of model where we attract people in and try and convince them to buy our things worked. Customers and consumers don't have the time or inclination to try and minutely analyze everything about your product or your brand. They don't have access to that information. I don't know the profit and loss breakdown of the brand that I'm buying a packet of crisps from. So organizations invest in building brands. Brands are the sum total of the experience that a user has with your messaging, your platform, and your product. And they do that because we want to convince our audiences that our brands are trustworthy and reputable, and they're making the right trade-offs of those choices on how much of my pricing goes on our marketing budget, how much of it goes in the CEO's pocket, how much of it is the product itself, et cetera, et cetera. Brands are a proxy for trust. And as consumers, we all want to make rational, informed purchase decisions, but when we don't have access to all the information, we fall back to trust. So what we're all trying to do when it comes to SEO and when it comes to conversion is convince our potential audience and our potential customers that we are the right choice for them, that we're trustworthy, that we've made trustworthy decisions on our pricing, our proposition, our marketing, and our storytelling. Imagine as a consumer for a moment, what would happen if you didn't need to rely on trust? If you could see through all of the marketing spiel and the brand storytelling and have a completely informed, transparent, perfect understanding of the price, the product, the service, the quality, the platform, and every aspect of the thing you're buying. If you completely understood all of those moving parts, might you shop differently? I think in many cases you would. If you understood that actually 70% of the cost of this product you're buying is going straight in the CEO's pocket, you might buy from somewhere else, for example. Google's race towards omnipotence and omniscience, to see and know all, is changing how the web behaves and how consumers behave. Their ambition to become the Star Trek computer that just solves our problems is changing how we behave, because they're getting better and better at understanding those intrinsic, inherent trade-offs and value propositions. They don't need to trust that a brand has a good product or that their product is priced fairly or that the brand has a great reputation. They don't suffer from information scarcity. And they're using that insight to make decisions on behalf of us as consumers on what a good fit looks like. Why is this relevant? It's because even if you're not competing in search, even if SEO isn't your primary channel, even if all of your conversions happen offline, in store, etc., search is how consumers research. At some point, people have a pain problem or realize that they need something, and they turn to a search engine to research and begin that journey. So when they go through that process, they see your website, they see your competitors' websites, they see the websites which Google has decided are trustworthy, good fits for their problems, and they don't see sites which aren't. And what's really changing over the last couple of years in particular is Google is getting incredibly good at quantifying quality. They're not just scraping and analyzing the text on your page. They're not just measuring how fast your site is, but they're assessing user interactions, web performance, product reviews, brand sentiment, and hundreds of other factors. And increasingly, this stuff is becoming explicit. So as they're getting better and better at understanding entities and language and quality, they can make sure that they only give me results which are a good fit for me. And here's the trick. When a brand isn't a good fit, when they don't meet the right balance of quality, cost, etc., they don't get shown, which means that the consumer never visits their website or installs the app, and they never see the brand on the messaging. Think for a moment of all the marketing activity that you do, the stories that you tell to overcome or shortcut information scarcity, to cover up your weaknesses or artificially amplify your strengths, only influence humans. And as systems get better at understanding the underlying quality of your thing, your storytelling and your marketing won't protect you. So all the money we're investing in trying to convince people that we're the best when we're not necessarily the best is going to get more and more expensive, and it's going to work less and less well. Essentially then, you need to have a great website. And this really is the crux of all SEO and conversion. And it boils down to this incredibly simple concept that you need to publish content that focuses on answering the questions of searchers and not just trying to sell them products and services. Content that solves the problems of your prospective users so that you build brand preference and brand recall. And to do that, you have to provide a differentiated experience across your design, your content, your product descriptions, your imagery, your photography, your messaging, your customer service, your packaging, your ingredients, your mission, your delivery, returns policies, your corporate social responsibility, and more. And you need to reflect all of this explicitly in your website content. Because whilst none of these are ranking factors in so much that Google explicitly might measure them, they are things which will influence how likely you are to be cited or recommended or shared or to be perceived as the kind of brand that should show up for a particular search term. These kinds of things do affect your rankings. And underneath all of that, you need to perfect all your technical bases like managing redirects, preventing 404 errors, nailing your site speed, etc., etc. If you want Google to present your pages as solutions to problems, you need to demonstrate explicitly for every single page that it's the best resource on the web for that particular user, for that particular query, for that problem. And this all happens way higher in the buying and research cycle than somebody searching for a keyword for something that you sell. It might happen weeks before that in a different channel entirely, when people are just starting to feel their pain points. In the e-commerce space, this is even harder because your most important pages are also trying to convince people to buy the thing, which might be at odds with trying to educate and support and assist them with solving their own problems. Thankfully, there are a ton of really great resources on how to tackle that inherent conflict and to make great pages. This Twitter thread from Paddy Mugan, who's really well respected in the SEO space, is an excellent guide as a starting place for all the things you should consider. And don't get me wrong, this is a huge task. It ranges from including trust signals to Q&A content, product videos to customer reviews and more. And doing this well is hard. This is a lot of work, and it's a lot more work than just throwing up a WooCommerce site and listing some products, because this is a competition and your competitors are putting in this work. So if you're not, you're going to fall behind. This requires resourcing and time and energy and effort. And of course, therefore, as many companies who are faced with this challenge, they struggle, they don't have the resources, or they can't or won't invest in this kind of activity. They just spend more on their paid ads. But consider that's going to become exponentially more expensive because there is going to be a smaller addressable market, because the competitors who are doing this well will take consumers out of that marketplace, which means there are fewer people searching for the kinds of terms you're bidding on, and every one of them is going to be more expensive to reach. The next concept you need to consider is that it's not just about your website. And as an SEO, this feels counterintuitive. My job is to get my site ranking higher so I can get more people to come to my pages, except we're seeing a transformation where Google ceases to be a gateway to content, a kind of menu of links to other websites, and instead is becoming the platform. It's not just where you search, it's where you consume and start and complete your journeys. Increasingly, you can do the thing you're trying to do in the search results. You can buy the movie tickets, listen to the podcast, watch the movie. These are different examples in the background. There's over 40 different types of search results, many of which allow you to complete your e-commerce journey without ever leaving the search engine. Google is trying to return the best results and experience for a user, that is rarely going to be a link to another website. Increasingly, we need to think about how we structure and expose our solutions for Google in a way that they can understand and consume. Because these formats don't deliver clicks to your website, which is great for consumers. It's really frictionless. My whole journey just takes place within the search engine. And when you look at where these kinds of featured snippets and zero-click searches have, therefore, when people are searching for information, therefore, when people are searching for trust, and they get it directly in Google, these are people searching for words like best, can, list, top. People are starting their e-commerce and conversion journeys who might not buy things for 3 weeks, but at this moment when they search, the things they see and the things they don't see inform what happens next. If you're not in that consideration set, if you don't have content that answers their questions and solves their problems, you're not going to show up and rank top for the keywords they search for when they're 20 steps further down that conversion funnel and buying cycle, when they know exactly what they need. And again, it doesn't matter if SEO isn't your primary channel, and if you do stuff offline or you use billboards. This is where people are being influenced. It's where they're discovering brands and building preference and considering reputations and trust. Because it's superfluous. But what's happening now increasingly is more of this is happening for e-commerce as well. Historically, this has just really happened in publishing. But now, look, recently, Google announced that if you're running WooCommerce and you add this plugin bolt-on on, all of your products can become automatically eligible to turn up in Google Shopping. This is a whole additional ecosystem and storefront. So as a user, as I search for my problems and my pain points, I will see products and solutions and delivery information and availability and shipping and local stores and reviews and USPs, all in the search results where I can buy directly without ever visiting a website. We need to think about beyond just how do I optimize my website and my rankings to how do I give Google the data it needs to represent and present my solutions. Google is no longer a search engine. It's no longer a place that delivers us our traffic to our websites. It's a system that solves the problems of its users on its platform. So how do you survive? A few things you should do. If you're not already familiar, look into structured data. This is the next battlefront. In order to fuel this revolution, Google really need to be able to extract more specific information from our businesses. It's not enough just to analyze the text on your pages. They need to really understand things like pricing and stock and availability. They do that through structured data and schema.org. In the back end, this looks something like this. You put a whole bunch of code on your page and Google reward you with fancy rich listings and snippets. There's a whole bunch of plugins that do this. Yoast SEO is one of them that does it out of the box. There are many others. Choose your own poison. But you really need to be investigating this space, particularly if you're in e-commerce. This allows you to describe your content explicitly to Google rather than relying on them guessing stuff. And it's part of the requirement to make you eligible for inclusion in all of those fancy formats. Helpfully, if you're using Gutenberg and the block editor, a lot of the stuff that you're already doing in your content is probably already generating structured data. The block revolution made it really easy for plugins to hook into this and do things like, okay, this is a product, it has a price, it has a description. A lot of this happens automatically behind the scenes. This allows you to create crazy, awesome graph node-based things that look something like this. This is a blog post on Yoast.com represented as a graph of structured data. So you as a human see a blog post with lots of words. Google see, okay, this is an article that has an author, and that author has an image, and that author is employed by an organization, which is the publisher. You can start to see the relations between these entities, and that is really critical to help Google understand when it should be surfacing your content and in which environments it should do so. Your website needs to be a database that feeds their website. We do that through structured data. Last thing, the other thing you really need to be considering before we get onto discussion is that one of the Google's real struggles in making this a reality is that the web is a bit slow and a bit rubbish, which is why they are obsessed with speed, and they're literally writing a book on performance optimization and page speed. It's why they've rolled out these new Core Web Vitals metrics. As of late last week, they've announced that the latest ranking factor, the big algorithm updates, is starting to land, where your performance against these metrics will impact your ranking. This is really hard on e-commerce sites because they're particularly complicated usually. But if you're not familiar with this, go Google Core Web Vitals, have a read of all the guides available. The TLDR is you need to make your website really fast, and then you're eligible for ranking boost potentially. If your website is really slow, other competitors may well outrank you. If that sounds terrifying, go check out AMP. This is a really interesting kind of potential cheat for making your site fast. It's a framework that Google are heavily involved in, that I'm heavily involved in. There is a WordPress plugin that automatically transforms your site in a way that might make it much more performant on those metrics. Definitely worth investigating. It also means that your website improves over time automatically, which is a pretty cool concept. So as things like Google roll out new standards and Chrome rolls out new standards, AMP means your website automatically adopts those and remains fast, which is mind-blowingly awesome, and it removes all the overhead and work. You don't have to think about it. Skip. Oh, if you haven't checked it out, check out SiteKit. This is a really cool new plugin from Google that gives you all of your metrics, including the performance stuff, in your WordPress dashboard. This can be really helpful for understanding everything at a glance. That is a lot to digest. Let's put it into a very brief framework. Do this. Be fundamentally a good fit for your audience, because otherwise Google will decide that you are not eligible to reach them. Like, you have to convince an omnipotent AI that your product or solution is a fundamentally good fit for these searchers. Otherwise, you never show up in front of them. And until you crack that, and that's your product, your service, your customer support, everything about it. If you're a restaurant, it's the quality of your ingredients, because that informs your reputation, which determines whether you get reviewed or not, which determines whether you get linked to, which influences your ranking factor. Have a perfect platform, which, yay, WordPress, you're most of the way there, but definitely look at performance and speed and things like AMP to do that. Expose your solutions. So use Gutenberg and look at schema and structured data so that you can give that to Google in a way they understand. Use AMP if all of this is terrifying, because it will cut a lot of these corners. Check out PWAs as well, which I skipped over because I've talked for far too long. Use SiteKit to get some of this insight, and then pick an SEO plugin of your choice to integrate all of this tidily and tie it all together in a way that makes it make sense, or go and spend more money on paid ads, because everybody else is going to be consuming and eating up all of your addressable market, and you're going to struggle to address them organically. Good luck. Wow.
That was awesome, to be honest with you. And I can see the expression on Pete's face. Pete, is there anything that you would like? I mean, there's surely what you can add. But having now seen Jono's presentation, and maybe we can just give a little bit more light to Google Web Vitals. So what do you think is a precondition when it comes to SEO conversion, actually, the website converting on SEO benefits?
Is that question directed at me, Maja?
Yes, I would like you to join I mean, Jono has started, has opened a number of topics, right?
So absolutely. So the first thing I would say is, and that presentation was brilliant. Even better that it was done at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I commend you for that, Jono. That was brilliant.
Thanks.
Ultimately, Google is also a business, and you need to think about how Google makes its money. Google makes its money by showing the best organic results, be it whatever type of result that it is, in order so that it can charge the most for the 3 search results that appear at the top, or the row of sponsored ads in certain forms of the search results. So our job, therefore, as web creators, is to play by the rules so that the best content we can create can be spoon-fed to Google, so that it knows where to put us, so that it can charge the most for those ads. Does that make sense?
Nice. Yep.
So that's ultimately the purpose of SEO, is to play that game the best way you possibly can, using the tools that hopefully the tools that work the best, but it might be the tools that you feel most comfortable with, particularly if you're starting out. And actually, in the realms of SEO, doing something well and doing it consistently is better than not doing anything at all. So this is where it's and I know Jono mentioned this a couple of times in his talk. Obviously, he is from Yoast, so I wasn't, he's obviously going to champion that. But if you're not using Yoast right now, that doesn't matter too much. Just be doing something and be doing it well, and then you can layer up the tools as time goes on, and you'll probably end up somewhere like Yoast if you're not there already. But don't get scared by it is the point I'm trying to make.
I see a lot of people on Twitter. Sorry,
go on, Jono. No, go on.
I see a lot of people on Twitter saying SEO isn't a plugin. Like, oh, I've just installed Yoast, therefore I've done my SEO. And you're completely right. That's not how it works. And like if you had the choice of write an awesome, really helpful blog post every week or have Yoast, I would maybe say, I do the thing, get the content out there that helps your users. Of course, have both, but really there's no point in having the tools, but not doing the work to demonstrate to Google that you are a good resource, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where the real power of SEO is compared to all of those paid ads and all of the other stuff that Jono's just mentioned as kind of the alternative, is that all of those things are essentially interruption marketing. They're all you forcing yourself into somebody's feed somewhere, be it an organic search result, be it a search result, or be it a Facebook feed or a Twitter feed or an Instagram story or whatever it is. Your people are expecting to be looking at pictures of family or dogs or children or whatever, and all of a sudden, hey, look, they're faced with ball bearings, and I've got an ad, and what am I supposed? Oh, I'll click on past it. By doing it that way, on a volume scale, eventually you'll get somebody that's interested in ball bearings, and then you might make a sale. But actually, you've interrupted a whole load of other people who either don't really care what you're about, or certainly aren't in a place to worry about it while they're going through whatever it is that they're going through. Whereas SEO is exactly the opposite way around. You are putting yourself out there so that those people who are interested, they might be right on the fringes, just as Jono said. They might be 30 steps away from making a conversion, whatever that conversion metric is, normally either a paid sale or a form. But they might be steps and steps and steps away from that, but they're already talking about how's this versus that, or what's the best for this, or how do I overcome this problem, or this is the issue that I'm facing, or how much does this cost, or whatever it might be. And you can start to get on those people's radar right at that outset point. And then, therefore, you're not interrupting them. They're actually interrupting you in a weird kind of twisted way. But it is the whole thing working the other way around. And slowly but surely, what's the phrase? Slowly catch your monkey. That's exactly how SEO works. Slowly but surely, they start to travel further and further. And actually, you then adopt that role as trusted advisor to them, rather than the supplier of XYZ good or
that's so nice.
Whatever.
Yeah, and in particular, I think there's a really key thing there, that the relationship is between the user and you as a brand, not the user and the thing they bought because they needed the thing at that particular moment in time. Trusted advisor is such a good way of framing this.
This is awesome. I'm sure our viewers will ask us questions. I'm sure we just need to give them a lot of material that they need to think about. So in the meantime, I would like to ask one question, like, how do you start? We've noticed in the chat, we have some people who are experienced in WordPress. Hello, Meher. Hello, Rahul. Thank you for joining. But I also wanted to ask, like, there are also people here who would like to start who are new with WordPress. So if you want to actually work, let's say you are able to build a web page, but you're not sure how to do an SEO, because SEO itself is an expertise, right? It's not enough it's not enough to have the knowledge of WordPress in order to create the SEO for a website. So how would you start, Jono, for instance, or Pete? What would you suggest to the people who are new to WordPress? How would they be able to start learning about SEO?
I get told off if I don't use this as an opportunity to say that we have Yoast SEO Academy, which has a whole bunch of free courses. And then if you want to specialize and go further, has a whole bunch of paid ones. It's a really good resource, not genuinely and it's obviously quite WordPress centric. So it's a great way to get started on the basics. But in parallel with that, again, to echo Pete, like, prioritize the doing. Start publishing, start writing content, start proving to users and Google that you are as good as you think or say you are. Like, you have to use words on pages to do that to a degree. And it doesn't matter how much reading up you do and how much research you do if you're not crafting and publishing content that demonstrates that you're the best.
About you, what would be your, like, you don't have to, I mean,
I'd say go and watch our call from about 6 weeks ago, because we went through this kind of step by step. But look, all of it any kind of intentional SEO means you need to start somewhere. Now, that might be that if you have the skills to do it or the software to do it, you can go and do some keyword research, and that might start you off on a trajectory. But actually, even if you don't know yet how to do that, if you're that sort of early on in your journey, the one thing I would do is write down every question that I repeatedly answer to customers. What's the top 5 things that most of my customers ask me as part of the sales? So whether that's, I run an agency, and one of the questions we get asked a lot is, so how much does a website cost? And the answer is always, well, how long's a piece of string? Do you want it just to be a single page, or do you want it to do your washing up? Where in that spectrum does your but so what? But it's just a question I get asked a lot. What are the top 5 things you get asked? The other thing I would do is I wouldn't look at people who already have everything sorted out. Because if you're starting with, I don't know, a 6-page website about your new product or your new service, so you're really excited to get it out there into the world, and then you go and look at somebody like Neil Patel, who has millions of blog posts, like hundreds of thousands of blog posts, literally. He's got the traffic going, he's got the ads going. It's very easy to get disillusioned and say, well, I'm never going to be able to compete with him. But you don't have to, because if you're intelligent, you're not trying to attract his customers. So take inspiration, I suppose, from those people that are further on down the journey with you, from you, but don't be disheartened. Don't try to copy them. Don't think that you need to do all of the things that they are now doing, because they have a team doing it, and it's likely that it's either just you or a couple of you actually working to begin with. So start with the things that are going to get you moving, and then layer by layer, a bit like an onion, you can start to add certain things on. I would certainly recommend that quite early on in your journey, you do start looking at that schema data, because essentially that's that spoon feeding of Google, like I mentioned before. If you can get things into a format that Google is going to understand, you're making the job easier. And if you think the purpose of the Google bot is to start at page 1 of the internet and work its way all the way through to page 17.5 billion, and then it goes back to page 1 again to see if you've made any changes to see if that's going to affect your rankings. So the easier you make Google's job in that massive worldwide complicated algorithm, then the more Google is going to appreciate you.
So now we know actually where to start. And are there any particular tools other than, for instance, does Yoast need a compatible semi plugin in order to be more successful? Is there anything that, for instance, let's say I would like to start with SEO, and it would be enough just for me to start to actually install the plugin, right? And then from there, I can build for each page actually the SEO and add. So basically, just one plugin is relevant when it comes to, for instance, from the Yoast point of view, one plugin is enough to install and to be able to change the visibility or increase the visibility of the page online.
Yeah, potentially, though. Yes, in a simplistic sense. However, also consider that, again, you're competing. So if your competitors have a better looking website than you, you might also need to address your design. If a competitor has a faster website than you, you might also need a really good caching plugin. So like the core of it, yes, Yoast or the SEO plugin of your choice is enough to give you the core tools, but SEO only works when it's so much more than SEO. It's also your reputation, it's also your content, it's also the color of your logo. All of these things contribute. And one of the things I wanted to touch on as well was we haven't talked about kind of aligning to your audience. So one of the big things you need to do quite early on is a whole bunch of market and keyword research, and which sounds daunting, but it essentially boils down to understanding how do people search for the thing that you do, or how do people search in your market, what kinds of words and phrases do they use. And the thing that people really don't do well then is use that information to shape your website and your content. And that might be everything from I should have a different category architecture to I should rename my products, right down to I should have blog posts about these types of topics because I realize that people ask these kinds of questions before they realize that they need these kinds of solutions. And really that's about more than just plonking a few keywords into an existing site. It's about aligning your whole business with how people search in order to fulfill those needs. And yeah, something like Yoast will give you most of the capabilities for that, but really you need to invest time in understanding your audience.
Pete, do you have anything to add? Or
just building on that, I mean, Jono mentioned this in his presentation. Of course, Google does also hold reviews. So you need to be attracting people that you know you can serve and you know you can delight, because actually it can be traffic ultimately is a bit of a vanity number. What you're looking for is that ideal customer that is the person that your product or service solves their problem. And you know, I would rather, as an SEO, I would rather get you 1,000 of those every month that you are going to sell to than 100,000 people to your website, most of whom don't care. So, you know, that's always been my take on how I approach SEO with clients. And that's where that quality piece comes in. But you need to make sure that you can delight those clients. So therefore your SEO needs to scale in line with your business, which is essentially what Jono's just said. You know, if we took you from today to tomorrow and you had 200% more custom, could your business handle it? Because if the answer is no, let's not pretend. Let's not say, oh, well, we'll figure out when we get there, because all that will happen is you'll end up peeing off so many people that they'll then leave bad reviews that then puts you further down in your SEO efforts. You know, it needs to be a scalable kind of model.
that's a very good point to say. I have another question for you guys, but I just want to actually address Meher's question. She's asking, can a single image in a blog post work for Google in terms of SEO? Sure, it can.
It can, yeah, it can. And an image that's delivered properly with the right tags around it, that's contextual to the content around it, yes, absolutely. And you know, for not just for Google, but for the way that the social media platforms will also scrape your website, having that written into is always good. However, one image isn't going to make or break an SEO strategy. So yeah.
I guess the question is, what does work mean, right? What problem is that image trying to solve? What value does that page provide? And if it's a very specific image and it's the only one of its kind and somebody is searching for it specifically, yeah, they'll probably find it. But I don't think having that image on that page is going to 10x your traffic overnight.
Actually, Meher is just adding a keynote saying, I mean, only one image without content. I mean, are we talking about the alt text? Are we talking about actually understanding and accessibility of this photo? Or let's say...
So if you're writing a blog post, open quotes, and that the entirety of that post is a title and an image, the reality is that's not it. I mean, let's just break that down for a minute. So if you've got a single image on a page, firstly, how's that going to work responsively? Responsive assessment of your website has been a ranking factor for well over 18 months, if not two years or more now. So, and images don't respond particularly well. Building a website for a moment for an architect, and one of the biggest issues we have is he doesn't want any of the images to what he's calling auto crop. So basically we have a responsive frame with the image in the background so that we can change it. Literally 5 minutes before this call, I had an email from him say, but now my blog looks messy. And I'm like, yes, that's because I've taken all the responsive frames off your blog page. Now all your images are different sizes. They look terrible, don't they? Do you want me to go and put the frame back on? And so if you've just got one image that looks great on desktop, it's beautiful. You can see all of the intricate detail. By the time you get it on mobile, nobody's going to be able to read it. Likewise, if you've then optimized that image for mobile, by the time you've just blown it up to desktop, it's going to be so big and long that, and probably pixelated, that nobody's really going to want to read it. So a single image as a blog post isn't a great idea. Google's getting better at indexing images. Whether it can read images or not to understand what the content is of that image is a very different question. That would be my take on it.
So there's a mindset shift which you need to consider when you're thinking about SEO, which is that every page on your site either needs to be an effective landing page or out of Google. And typically an image on a page isn't going to be a particularly valuable landing page experience. Somebody who searches for something, who enters your site and they just get a picture, is going to think, where am I? What is this? Where is the proof that this is a good solution to my problem? Who is this brand? What's going on? That's not a great experience. And in that kind of case, you might actually want to say, you know what, I should no index these pages entirely. But then that's not part of your SEO strategy, and you might be investing time in the wrong places. So you really got to think about, is this a valuable landing experience? And what there's a really nice mental model that I found for trying to help you think through this, is you just stop using the word SEO and start using the word quality and quality experience. And you just look at every single page and every single experience and you say, is this high quality? And if the answer is no, that's an SEO problem. And you can make just an image on a page a high quality experience, but it is so much work and it is so specific that, generally speaking, I would be, at the very least, putting some words around those to describe what this page is and what it's for.
That is awesome. Since we're also closing the hour, I also, before anyone else asks a question, Meher, if you have any other, if you'd like, we can also put you on screen. If you'd like to ask another question, please let us know. We would like to introduce you and if you can join our great crew. So actually, my question to you is, like, let's say, clients don't actually, most of the time, don't know what they're looking for when they come for help to get a website. They're not aware of the fact that building a website and preparing it for conversion, actually, doing an SEO, it could be a job for two people, right? Not every page builder, or let's say not page builder, not every WordPress designer and developer is able to do the SEO. Somebody is just good in design, somebody is good in coding. And so how do you sell it as a full service when a client comes to you and says, look, I have this in this store and I'm selling bread and butter and whatever. So, and I'd like my shop to be visible. So can you make the shop for me? Of course, a designer or developer will say, yes, I can make it for you, no problem at all. But then how do you explain to the client? Because there is another step that needs to be done before he actually starts being visible online. So how do you sell it? And in sense of that you are not decreasing your services because he needs to add maybe a little bit more money on top of it for some other experts. So how does this sales go of professional experience and then something that you need to outsource, perhaps?
You go, Jono.
No, after you. I've been out of the agency game for a little while,
okay,
precisely because I find that this kind of scenario is difficult, because often the answer is you need to do a whole bunch of hard work, to which they go, did not expect that, and then the whole relationship is unpleasant.
So I use, there's an education piece that needs to go that needs to happen at the start of this, which is I had her name's Cindy Phelps, that's it, was on my podcast last year. She runs an agency that builds websites in a day. And
wow.
From start to finish in a day. She has a whole process. Go and check my podcast called Retain FM. Just search for Cindy Phelps and you'll find it. But she used this expression that a website isn't delivered, it's born. And
yes,
that is exactly the education piece that you need to put in place with your clients. So right up at the start, when I'm starting with proposals with clients, I'm talking about the ongoing need for SEO. Now, at that point, I'm not talking about whether I'm going to charge them for it or not. Occasionally, I put in an indicative kind of cost, but it's, at that point, I'm trying to sell a website, food on the table. So it's not a key part of the messaging, but then right throughout the process, right from the start, if you buy a website from me, the very first thing we do is a planning exercise with you. Some people might call it a discovery session. And as part of that, we will start to talk about keywords. I'll also start to talk about business strategy. I'll also want to know what your turnover is and what your profit and loss was for what was last year. I start to ask some spiky questions, and all of that is trying to put this education in place that, when we get to that live date on whatever it is, 30th of July this year, that your website isn't finished then. It's only just born. It needs to grow from that point onwards. I have released a course or some advanced modules to an SEO course I wrote a while ago. about this. So I can always supply details for that if you'd like.
It's really nice. Jono, we learned something today, right?
Nice. Yep.
So do you miss the agency days?
I do a little bit. I like the kind of high octane problem solving, but I think one of the things I've seen in the SEO industry in particular is there are fewer and fewer things that you can deliver. Like, so much of SEO is consultancy where I tell you what you need to do because you're the product expert. It's your website. You really need to be writing the content. You really need to be communicating and understanding your audience, etc. There's very little that I can hand you as a done thing other than recommendations of things that you should do. And that can work with the right education and the right clients and the right relationships, but often what people want is a monthly set of hours that gets stuff done in the background that they're not really invested in, that they want to outsource just problem solving. And that's very much not how SEO works. Once upon a time, you maybe could have commoditized some of those deliverables to a degree, but now I see that getting harder and harder. And SEO really just becomes a consultancy on how do we improve this website and everything about it, the content, the design, the speed, the security, the accessibility. And that is a long list of stuff, and none of it is stuff that I can do for you, or very little of it.
Pete, anything to add? Perhaps.
I
try not to. I try not to put a big burden on you, but I think your view is also great.
Yeah, So one of the so I do two parts to my living. Let me put it that way. Run an agency here in the UK. The other is I run a service called SEO Hive, where we have sort of tried to commoditize certain elements of SEO. Let me say in order to ultimately help agencies build recurring revenue into their businesses. Now, from that, there's a lot of SEO that I say there's a lot of SEO we don't do. That's not technically true. We have had to sort of bound things together. So we basically focus in three main areas, which are easy for agencies to help productize to their clients. So that is content. So actually generating content from keyword research. It's a lot of those terms that Jono had in his presentation about how and why and when and versus and all of that kind of stuff. I was impressed to see chicken was also on there.
Yes,
and it was above iPhone. I couldn't believe it. So we look at actually because are we generating regular content for you? Yes, we are. We're generating 3 pieces a month or 6 pieces a month, whatever it might be. It's quite an easy thing. And again, for clients that aren't generating anything, generating something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
We then look at link building or link outreach, we call it. And that's largely down to a number of the factors that Jono mentioned in his presentation. Because we're working with third-party sites, we aren't necessarily in control of how they look or what their, how responsive they are or what their security is like, et cetera, et cetera. So everything we're doing is white hat. So therefore we can't guarantee that we will get you 10 links a month. What we can guarantee is that we'll outreach to 50 domains a month for you. And actually, if we start to get negative feedback from them about your site, or if we've picked on something up already, then this probably isn't a great fit. And then the third thing we do is it's called our on-page path. Taking a lot of those on-page factors and sorting them out. So things like the schema data, making sure that's installed properly, making sure that as many of those sort of tick items that we can do are done for you, making sure your caching set up properly, making recommendations of CDNs if we need to, looking at your hosting, all of that kind of stuff is what we do on the on-page pathway. The only one of those that comes down to hours is the on-page pathway, where we say you get 5 hours of time a month. Everything else is in a deliverable of X pieces of content or X domains reached out to. So that's it's not designed as a service that will take SEO to the major brands or the blue chip companies of the world. It's a service that's designed to help design agencies or digital agencies with their existing client bases of plumbers and cafes and lawyers and local businesses do something to help them.
Awesome. I think the whole WordPress community actually is helping the community survive. in the situation where we were not, nothing was accessible, I think that WordPress actually made life and economy accessible. Pete and Jono, please, if you have any like useful links that you would like to share, like perhaps links to the academy or perhaps the training, Pete, that you have. I think this is very useful to people just to have in mind, you know, if they are considering like their path in SEO or perhaps assisting a client or have a question. If you have personal handles on Twitter or similar, please share it as well, so we can actually connect with you and follow the content that you guys are delivering, because what I think that you guys are doing is just amazing. Both of you have excellent approach to business development nowadays. Web business is business development for everyone else. Since we don't have too many other questions, I wouldn't like be able to, I mean, I could actually ask you too many other questions, but I don't know if people have any like things to do. It's actually Monday. It's beautiful weather, and it's very.
It's Monday. Rubbish.
Yeah, it's Monday. Can you imagine? But come to it.
My mum has a fridge magnet on her fridge that says Monday is a terrible way to spend a seventh of your life.
Well, I think I'm gonna copy this. It's awesome. I would really like to thank all of you today, our viewers. Thank you for coming and joining us. Everyone who has a question, later on after this show will be recorded and it will be on YouTube. And the same link you used actually to join this show will be the link where you will find the recording in a couple of days as soon as I put it up. Jono, thank you very much for your session today. We hope to hear from you soon with new things. If there is anything new with Yoast, please come and join us. Let us know what's new. I think there are so many open questions, maybe even like about globalization, languages, and how to do an SEO. Maybe we can talk in some further meetups about some difficulties actually when it comes to languages, how those are overcome with Yoast.
That'd be cool. That's a big topic.
Yeah, and I think it will take just another meetup as well, you know, just for this, because there are so many different things that need to be done. Pete, I hope that your season is going to be fruitful. I hope that all the clients will be very happy. And if there is anything new with the agency, please let us know.
Of course.
In the meantime, I would wish everyone a happy Monday, although it's not perceived as such. But I hope that the rest of the week will be beautiful, that you guys will plan your vacation, spend some time with your family, and as well come to our next GoDaddy Pro EMEA Meetup. The next GoDaddy Pro EMEA Meetup will be about conversions, but from a point of community and how to build the audience. And Gijsel will actually work on you. Actually, it's brand building. So we're going to be talking about brand building from many different points, which is relevant to conversions. So if you'd like, please join us next time. In the meantime, I wish you all the best. See you.
See you,
Maja.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
So